Welcome to our next session on our Swar Music School snippet series. Last week we had talked about the swar, what shruti is. We talked a little bit about what dhwani is. Dhwani means the sound. We briefly touched upon what an octave is, which is nothing but the 7 notes in each of the scales. And we talked a little bit about the Shuddha Swar, which is what we have on the board right now, and the Vikrit Swar. Vikrit Swar is another form of the pure note, which can be either a flat note or a sharp note. The flat notes are called Komal Swar, which are lower than the Shuddha counterparts. And then the Tivra Ma is the only Tivra note, which is basically a little bit higher in between the Shuddha Ma and the Pa, and that's the sharp notes. So here I've just written down our first 7 notes in a Saptak, and as you can see we don't have any dots underneath or dots on the top, which basically means we are talking about the Madhya Saptak or the middle octave. Now a lot of people have asked me what is Purvang of the Saptak and what is Uttarang of the Saptak. It's very simple. Purva Ang, literally in Hindi Purva means the former. So the Purva Ang is basically the first part of the octave. So if you look at it, I've drawn a dotted line on Ma because if you notice we have 7 notes and Ma is literally the midpoint of it. So technically, based on the old theory, this was really the first part, and then you had the second part which actually went from here to here. So you basically had the Saregama as Purvang and then Padhanisa as Uttarang, including Ma in some instances. Now the issue with that was because you have to divide both the parts in almost equal portions so that you have a balance between the Purvang and the Uttarang. The issue was many of the rags basically have a lot of focus on Ma right here, in which case the most important note of the rag is Ma, which is also called the Ansh Swar or the Vadi Swar. And usually when the Vadi is Sa, the Samvadi becomes Sa. So if this is my Vadi, then this is my Samvadi. Samvadi is nothing but the second most important note. Then the problem with this theory was that it would be actually part of Purvang, both Vadi and Samvadi. However, based on rag rules, to maintain the balance between the two portions of the octave, is if Vadi is from the Purvang, then the Samvadi has to be from the Uttarang, and vice versa. So if your Vadi is from the Purvang, then your Samvadi has to be from the Uttarang, and if your Vadi is from the Uttarang, Samvadi has to be from the Purvang. So that's a pretty straightforward inverse relationship. So if you notice here, this is my Purvang and this is my Uttarang. So let's take a pause and see if this theory holds true in the modern times. What happens if Ma is skipped and let's say Re is skipped in the rag? Then what happens? You have Sa Ga Pa, which means you have Pa Dha Ni as your Uttarang and Sa Ga in your Purvang. So the balance kind of is hard given how many notes you have in the rag. So depending on the rag under consideration, there were many a times problem with just extending the Purvang up till Ma. So what the modern theory does is basically it took the Ma and also took the Pa under consideration. So in the modern theory, you basically take this and extend it all the way to Pa. And same thing, you basically take this from Ma and do it from Pa. So what happens in the modern case is you have Sa Re Ga Ma Pa as your Purvang and Ma Pa Dha Ni as your Uttarang. So you've extended it a little bit. So this accommodates all the rags where you have a lot of Varjit Swar. Varjit Swar is nothing but notes skipped. So if you have any skipped notes, basically it still gives you the opportunity to balance it out, which means if your Purvang is extended till Pa and let's say your Vadi is Re, then your Samvadi in that instance can be Pa, Dha or A, right? So Pa or Dha both. And in that case, pa will belong to the Uttarang. However, if your Vadi is ma and your Samvadi is, let's say, sa, which are many rags like Bhimplasi, Bageshri, in that instance, ma will belong to the Uttarang and sa will belong to the Purvang, maintaining the balance. It's just like a seesaw. If you don't have two people playing with almost the equal weight, it's no fun anymore. It's just like that. If you don't have equal focus and equal strength in both the parts of the Saptak or the octave, the resulting play on the rag and the notes is not as interesting as it could have been. So that's why, to maintain this integrity, we extend the Purvang from sa to pa and the Uttarang goes from ma to ni. So which means ma and pa are really the gray area. Depending on the rag and the notes in the rag, they can either belong to the Purvang or the Uttarang. Now let's take a few examples. I mentioned very quickly that the Vadi note was the most important note in a rag and Samvadi note was the second most important note in the rag. So let's take a few examples and see if this theory holds. So if I take, let's say, Bhupali, Vadi in that case is ga, which means Vadi is in Purvang, and that's why it's called a Purvang Pradhan rag. So the Vadi basically defines what the rag Pradhanta is. So if the Vadi is in the Purvang, it's a Purvang Pradhan rag. The Samvadi for Bhupali is dha, which nicely sits in the middle of the Uttarang. So in that case, this balance is good. Then let's talk about another rag where the Vadi is in the Uttarang. So let's talk about Bhairav. Bhairav Vadi is dha, Komal dha, which is in the Uttarang. So Bhairav is a Uttarang Pradhan rag. And then the Samvadi is Komal re, which sits in the Purvang nicely. Again, maintains the balance. If you look at some of the rags that have Masa Vadi Samvadi, like I just mentioned, Bhimplasi or Bageshri, then in that case, Ma will belong to the Uttarang and then Sa is considered part of the Purvang because of course it is the first note in the Purvang. So this way, the relationship between Vadi note, the Purvang and Uttarang of the Saptak define the Pradhanta of the rag. One last concept I would like to leave you with is, how you have a time of the day that each rag is sung, which is also called the Samay. It's nothing but it's a little bit old concept where they said the rag was most powerful at that time of the day. One interesting fact to remember is if your Vadi is in the Purvang, usually those rags are sung at night. And if your Vadi is in Uttarang, those rags are sung at daytime, which means it's an inverse relationship. Again, if Vadi is in the Purvang, the rag is sung at night. And if the Vadi is in the Uttarang, the rag is sung in the morning. Again, Vadi in the Purvang makes the rag Purvang Pradhan, sung at night. Vadi in the Uttarang makes the rag Uttarang Pradhan, and it is usually sung in the morning. So with that, I would like to conclude this snippet session. I hope you understood the concept and I would love to hear your comments and let me know what other topics I can cover, and have an awesome day. Thank you so much for joining.